welcome to another exciting edition of Democracy and the Rule of Law. We do sincerely apologize for that mistake. If you're just tuning in, this is Democracy and the Rule of Law. Good to have you join us on the show today. My name is Solomon Offem. Now, Democracy and the Rule of Law will treat topical issues from a legal and a legislative point of view. So everything we're going to be talking about in this show, where politics, business, current affairs, we're looking at it from the legal standpoint, and that's why we always have lawyers and lawmakers on this show to help us talk about what needed to be talked about from the legal point of view, and of course we dissect the Constitution if there is need to do so. Once again, you're welcome to Democracy and the Rule of Law. I'm Solomon Offem. Let's quickly take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. First, we'll be taking a look at the panels of inquiry. Yesterday made it exactly 2 months that the infamous Lekki Tollgate shooting happened. And we're going to be taking a look at what has happened between then and now. And of course, different state governments set up panels of inquiry to look at the police brutality, and of course take a look at compensations if need be. How far has this panel gone? What powers do they have? What legal standing do they have? Who can they summon to this panel? And at the end of this inquiry, what will happen after that? So these are what we're going to be taking a look at today. And of course, if we have time, we'll take a look at how the lawmakers can help fight insecurity in Nigeria. We do know that the lawmakers invited the president to the National Assembly to brief them on the latest on insecurity, and the president declined. And of course, not long after that, the Kankara kidnap happened. And we're going to be taking a look at how the lawmakers can help put a better check on the judiciary, I beg your pardon, on the executive, of course led by the president, and of course we all know that the service chiefs are answerable to the president, and how they can help to fight insecurity in Nigeria. So these are what we're going to be talking about today on Democracy and the Rule of Law. Once again, I'm Solomon Offem. We'll go for a break. When we come back, I'll introduce my panel and we'll start talking. Just tuning in, this is Democracy and the Rule of Law on Galaxy Television. I have Barrister Tunde Kolawole in the house today. He is a public affairs analyst and of course a legal practitioner. Good to have you join us on the program today.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Solomon, and good afternoon to all the people who have always taken their time to listen to us every week.
Okay, I also have a Barrister Elvis Asia, a legal practitioner. You're welcome to the show today, sir. Okay. So let's take a look at the Lekki Tollgate shooting and of course the aftermath of it. Yesterday made it 2 months where the infamous Lekki Tollgate shooting happened, and a lot of things have happened after that. Of course, after the shooting, of course, the hoodlums took advantage of the protest, and a lot of destruction happened after that. And there were curfews in different states, and different states set up panels of inquiry to look into the matter. After years of crying about police brutality, finally they decided to set up a panel to look into this. Now, let's start from the shooting, and then we'll now move over to the panel. Now, we all agree that the protest was peaceful before the shooting started. Now, and this administration on different levels have come out to give legal standing why the protest is illegal in the first place. So let's start from there. In a democratic setting, is it unconstitutional is it illegal to have a protest? Because after the whole thing, there've been a threat of a second wave of Leggy protests.
Exactly.
And the IG have come out to say that if there was any protest, there will be a repeat of what happened, of how the police handled it. Whatever that means.
For me, you see, it's like a parent or a guardian beating a child for one misdemeanor, mistake, or infraction or the other. And then you now begin to say that the child does not have the right to cry after you have administered corporal punishment for such a person. Anyone who takes that kind of a position, in my humble opinion, wouldn't be towing the right path of even sanity. So also in law, when you look at the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and in all civilized societies and all that, people are not expected to engage in self-help. The alternatives that are open to people to kind of voice their grievances, to make government know where the shoe is pinching them, and also to ensure that the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and all the standard laws of the land are complied with, are abide with, and everybody stand by the Constitution. Is either you go to court, set up by the Constitution, whether customary, state, federal court, court of appeal, and Supreme Court. You could also subject yourself to mediation, arbitration, and what have you. The other alternative that are open to citizens is things like protests and rallies in all civilized societies of the world. And that is why the Constitution, when you look at the provisions of the Constitution, especially under the provisions of the fundamental rights, principles and whatever, you will say freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom to voice opinion, freedom to even dissent, to say, look, I don't like this, I don't agree with it, and don't visit it on me. So if the laws of the land, like the Constitution, and other instant laws of the land, and then in the Inspector General of Police and Muhammadu Buhari, which was a case that was decided by the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal made it amply clear. That was the time when President Muhammadu Buhari himself was seeking to become president of Nigeria. And he indeed led protests in Abuja, in Lagos, in here and all that. Exactly. And I think the IG of police went to court to challenge, when that protests were forcefully broken up and all that, I think the CPC, which was his political party at that period in time or thereabout, or was it the APC, they went to court to contest their right to protest. Their right to protest, and then the Inspector General of Police saying that they require permit to be able to organize any protests and rallies and what have you. And the Court of Appeal, in its wisdom, said no, right to protest, right to demonstrate and what have you, and then right of dissent is a constitutional right that nobody can take away from anybody, and that you don't require any police permit for you to be able to engage in any protests or rallies anywhere in any part of the country.
So let me get this clear. Sorry to cut you have citizens have a right to protest without police permit.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. It's a court decision which has not been challenged, set aside, or in any way overridden by any other decision by the Supreme Court and whatever. So they have that right and all that. And I think it's a thing that we should encourage as a nation. All of us now are shadowed with all forms of criminalities and what have you, in forms of banditry, in form of Boko, in form of armed robberies and all that. You see, some of these things begin to happen when you shut the door, you shut the gate for people to really ventilate their grievances, either through the court and the normal court process, or through arbitration, conciliations, and then mediation. Or you forcefully suppress people's right to protest. Such you have begun to see since this, the advent of the Muhammadu Buhari administration. And I think it is very, very dangerous for the polity, because at the end of the day, it encourages FF, it encourages anarchy, it encourages banditry, and it also forces people to go underground to begin to do more devious things.
And that's much more dangerous.
Exactly, absolutely much more dangerous.
Because it's stuff like that that
Oh,
brought rise
yes.
to
Exactly.
Boko Haram and stuff like that.
And just like you yourself have rightly identified in your introductory remarks and all that, the protests were absolutely peaceful until the state, it was the state, in fact specifically, it was the state security service, the so-called DSS, and then some supporters of the present administration, which they have not denied, which is in the public domain, in the social media, published in Sahara, published in Premier Times and all that. Some Buhari, Kiniko Mamadou Buhari support organization, Mamadou Buhari this, APC this and that and all that. They were the ones that introduced that variable, that element of anarchy and chaos, and then burning of properties and all that. So when the state begin to sponsor hoodlum, whose pictures were published on social media, on carrying cutlasses and other dangerous weapons and other, and up till now nobody has been arrested and prosecuted, then you begin to see that there's some credence in people saying that these are state-sponsored attack on those who went to some of these protests protest. Furthermore, the other angle to it is that even though why we do not encourage anarchy, why we do not encourage destruction of public property and what have you, you and I will know there are two sets of people that were engaged in that demonstration. Initially, the demonstrations and protests, I prefer to call it uprising, was led by very educated, open professionals, lawyers, medical doctors, engineers, and computer scientists.
Well, like the young elites, the young elites of the society.
And they were going on about it in a very peaceful manner and other, like
and
you
well
said,
organized
until
from the social media
exactly
to the streets.
until we saw the state introduce this element of anarchy, this element of chaos, this element of attack and burning, or people were protesting where they park their cars and all. Then the other set, which I also want us to recognize, which is a fact and all that, is that you have
the
young and old, exactly, very hungry people, abandoned people have no home. When you go to Oshodi now, you see young Nigerian, both boys and girls, sleeping under the bridges. You go to the average, to the bus stops and the motor parks and all that, you see all these young Nigerians who will run after the yellow buses and all that to see whether there are these women or men inside those buses committee who have one goods or the other to offload, and which they help them carry either with their heads or with the wheelbarrows and all that. All these people are angry and hungry Nigerian youth. People who have no hope, who are forlorn, who don't know where the next means are going to come from.
And interestingly, exactly. Some of them are educated.
Of course,
no
I mean, we have seen OND, I have seen an OND person, I have seen a graduate riding an Okada, and so most of those boys you see carrying those things and all. Some of them have finished their school, sir. Maybe opportunity to get to university education, maybe their parents cannot afford it, maybe admissions is even so competitive that they cannot have opportunity for some of this, and then they now resort to these mania and petty jobs and all that to make ends meet. When there are crises, go and study. Since the advent of this civil rule in Lagos especially and all that, each time there are crises and all that, this group of young Nigerians always want to vent their anger on the system.
They are just waiting behind, looking for the opportunity.
Go and check. Since the advent of this democracy, any time there is any public disturbances, either in Lagos, in some of these other like Abuja, Kano, and some of these cities like Port Harcourt and other, they will always cash in on this and vent their anger on the society. The other group, which many people are not talking about, are those young Nigerians who have gone through the mills, the criminal trial process. And you know it's mostly people below the age of 50. Go and check who are mostly victims of our criminal trial process. They are the ones who will be accused of armed robbery, rape, burglary, petty stealing of people's ancestors and all that. When these people, right from the time they are arrested and all that, the police begin to subject them to all sorts of brutality, all forms of brutality, right from the beginning. And then when maybe they are unable to buy their way out from the police station and then they are taken to the court, then the punishment, even when they have not been tried and convicted, we also continue from there. One adjournment today, the other adjournment today, and then they are left to rot away in the prison yard where they are never fed, where there are so many congestion, where if you stay too long in there, you are exposed to scabies, you are exposed to tuberculosis, you are exposed to AIDS, you are exposed to money. Exactly. And in the trial might go on the fastest criminal trial that probably takes place in Nigeria, if it is not involving the big and the rich people, an average is about 3 years. There is no young person who has gone through the criminal trial process, served the sentence, or even get acquitted or got discharged out of technicality and all that, who will never be angry with the Nigerian judicial system. Who will never be angry. So when opportunities like this come, such young people also want to vent their anger on the society because they think the society has not treated them very fairly. That is the reason why you saw some people go to court to go and burn those courts. That is why you see some of these young people go to police station to go and burn some of these police stations and all that. In fact, go and do your research, go and do your statistics. Most of the police stations that were burned are notorious for extortion, high-handedness, torture, and extrajudicial killing. Take, for example, let's be open with ourselves. The one in Orile. I have been involved with so many cases of young Nigerians from Orile, police station that was burned and all. If you see the horrendous things that that police station visits on the young people in that community and all that, you will know that they will not want any police station within that vicinity again if they have their way. Also look at the police station in Mushin, where a DP opened fire on the protesters and about 25 of them were killed. So many of them injured. They are still in the hospital today. The man who was alleged to have killed them is called Gbakoje. And what is the meaning of Gbakoje? What he's talking about is to give you a shot, an AK-47 shot and all that, and then you are asked to swallow it. And when a DPO has that kind of mentality, has that kind of a disposition and all that, and the young people within that community are visited with that kind of horrendous treatment on a daily basis and all that, you will know that each time there is crisis, each time there are no crisis such as we have had in the NSAS protests and all that, such persons who want to one way or the other visit their anger on the society, even the ordinary person. People like us were also not safe. When the demonstration were going on, I visited some of the protest grounds and all. I tried speaking or addressing some of the, they say, no, lawyer, we don't want to. You people are part and parcel of them. That is to say, even when the crisis boils over and all that, some of us who are not state actors, who are not policemen, who are not even judges.
The aggression is transferred.
Exactly. So that is all we are saying. If these people would listen, if people would want peace in this society, if these people don't want anarchy, especially the government, if they don't want people to engage in self-help and all, I appeal to them to allow this judicial panel to do its job the way it should be done. And unfortunately, they are not allowing this panel to go the way it's expected to go.
We'll take a look at the panel, but let's just discuss about the shooting. Let's bring in Barrister Elvis Asia into it now. So just give us your take generally on the whole protest, the shooting.
Well, generally, like my friend said, it's beyond a constitutional right to protest. It's a fundamental, it's a natural right.
Human right.
It's a natural right to protest. I mean, just like you said, when somebody is beaten, it's expected for the person to cry. And the Nigerian system over the years has beaten Nigerians so much that it is even a miracle that the protests we are seeing are still on this rudimentary level. With the kind of systemic oppression that has happened in this country, either through corruption or through systemic failures, whether at the level of the presidency, National Assembly, at the state level, the local government system, the security agencies. So it is a miracle that we still have these pockets of protest, because the Nigerian system today it has failed. I used to say it was failing, but right now it seems to have failed. And there's really nothing that you can say that the youth, the younger people of this generation have gotten. Somebody was telling me the other time that, oh, the younger people in this country are not proactive, they are not involved in the election. I said, what training have you given them? What they have received is oppression. If you listen to the president, for example, you can see somebody who thinks that the rest of us are his children. His children in a prehistoric society where a father can just dish out orders. I'm a father. I've come to realize that my son only listens to me when I reason with him. If I tell him, politely that do this, he does it without any stress. But the moment you begin to use force, that's what you get. So when you have a presidency that believes in dishing orders, if you look at his broadcast during the protest, you can see somebody who thinks that we are all just his, playground. You cannot have, so you expect to see, protest. And it is natural, it's even constitutional. The Constitution allows people to protest peacefully. Yes, I can say that peacefully, because once you introduce criminality to the system, then it is expected that the security agencies will deal with criminality. And that was what they did in this. You can see that for days, the protest was going on, peacefully. We had, artists, we had, very brilliant young Nigerians, were involved.
Young minds of the society.
The protest was so organized. I even saw situations where it became a philanthropic gathering, where they were taking care of people. I saw one old woman who, monies were raised for. This was what Nigerians were doing. It was a beautiful thing to behold. For the first time, my confidence in the future of Nigeria was raised when I saw the way and manner the protest was being organized. Of course, the Nigerian state cannot deal with that. The Nigerian state doesn't understand how to deal with people in a civil manner. And so they had to introduce criminality into the system. And just like my friend said, what we saw, I saw some pictures from Abuja, for example, of SUVs, releasing people, beating protesters and all of that. We saw a situation where government boxes were used, government vehicles were used to convey hoodlums around the Alausa area.
And they didn't even organize it well. It was so obvious.
Exactly. So they were the ones that introduced the goal of the protest. Even in areas such as Fadeid, it's a very notorious area where you have all sorts of criminals and hoodlums and people. It was so well organized. I was coming one day, they blocked that place. They were roasting cow and eating it. And they told me that I had to wait. They didn't fight anybody. They said, look, we have to finish doing what we are doing. And we waited till late in the night, and before they allowed us to pass, they didn't beat anybody. They didn't touch any vehicle. So it was peaceful. So
and they were civil with how they were handling the public.
You talked about the Lekki shooting, for example. If you look at what happened in Lekki, that was the hallmark of a beautiful protest. I was always looking forward to seeing pictures from what was happening at that place. Youths were well behaved. I never believed that we had youths in this country who could be so well behaved in the face of tyranny from the government, in the face of tyranny from the police and other security agencies. They were so well behaved. All they were talking about was, look, fix the problem. Nobody was interested in beating anybody, and I can tell you for free that until the soldiers intervened in Lekki, there was no any single incident of violence in Lekki as is during the course of the protest. And then you now ask yourself, why was it now that it was that kind of protest that the soldier went to attack? And when that happened, we saw all sorts of stories. Initially they said, the soldiers weren't there, and then later they admitted they were there, but they went there with blank bullets, and then they said, nobody was killed. You see, you don't want to see this kind of thing in a court. And then another thing, there's one thing that you need to see from the Lekki incident. We're going to talk about security, but there's one thing you need to see. We need to point out from the Lekki incident. It just shows that there is no control. We don't even know who is in control of the military at the moment, because under our law, under the Constitution and the Armed Forces Act, the Commander-in-Chief ought to be the one giving orders.
That's the executive.
But I can tell you that he wasn't aware that the soldiers were at Lekki. Now, I understand there are situations where the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces will delegate his powers to security chiefs, to carry out some kind of order. But the point is, on an issue such as the protests that engulf the country, one would expect that if you want to quell that kind of protest, the orders will come from the president. The kind of stories we have heard from the presidency, different stories from some ministers, from the Attorney General, from some funny spokesperson for the president, shows that the president is not in charge. And that is a big worry for me.
Now,
just a minute.
Okay.
I wanted to do an intervention. A little disagreement with my learned friend. And I think the president is aware. Why do I say so? You will recollect that a day or two before the shooting started, there was a meeting between General Olunishakin, the chief of defense staff, and also the chief of the Inspector General of Police and all that. It was shortly after that meeting that we saw this brutality being visited on the protesters in a different places. Then he also raised a pertinent issue, which most Nigerians are not paying attention to. Why was the choice of Lekki toll gates for the attack? You would have expected the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which was blocked, in which people were not being allowed to freely go in and out, and then the Lagos State Government Secretariat, in which government businesses were, so to say, paralyzed. One would have expected that that would be the play that the army or the security people would want to clear. No! The choice of Lekki went to achieve two things. The internal politics that is going on within the APC informed the choice of the shooting that took place in Lekki. What they wanted to use it as part of their own dirty internal politics to teach one of their own a lesson or give him a bad name. Secondly, they also want to use it to break up the protest. And then when they are broken up the protest physically or brutally, the way they have done, such that the blame at the end of the day will be directed or will be visited on this one of their own that they think.
Okay, that's another way to look at it.
Exactly.
Okay.
They see, because you ask yourself, why the choice of Lekki? Ask yourself. But the APC, since the inception, is this dirty, very terrible policy within themselves, and they are taking that dirty policy into the society. So, why not limit it within your own political party?
So you were saying the Lekki shooting was a political play.
I strongly suspect so.
Okay.
From all the indices that I'm saying, I strongly suspect so that it has a political undertone. One, it's meant to break up the protest, no doubt about it, but also to deflect blame to certain quarters.
Now that's one conspiracy theory.
Exactly. Exactly.
Another conspiracy theory
said
the chief investor of that toll gate was the one that had to intervene because he's losing a lot of money from the work not going on there because of the protest. So what side of the
that was
because all these
the first impression that was given.
Okay.
The first impression that was given was that perhaps the perceived interest of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, perceived interest. I say perceived because I don't know whether there's any documentary or legal basis for people coming to the conclusion that he has invested in the toll. I have not laid my hands on any such document, so I can say perceived, because generally the people believe that he has an interest there. That was the first impression I was giving. In fact, you can see that even the military said, "Look, we're not there. We had no interest in Lekki and all of that." And then on social media, you could see Tinubu trying to deflate and deny their passive involvement. I saw some, videos or recording of, telephone conversations and all of that, where he was trying to say, "Look, I don't have any investment there." That was the first, you see. So the point the in quote conspiracy theory that he raised, to that extent, seems to have some merit.
Okay.
We seem to have a leg to stand on.
That's some power.
Yeah, because immediately after that happened, it was almost like, let's make it look like he was the one. In fact, there were stories of the camera there was put off, and there was the removal of video evidence that could have given a good impression or a good account of what really happened at Lekki toll gate. So that was the first impression. But and then the government almost bought into it or gave the impression. I mean, that's what I would say from all their conflicting reports, that they were not there. If you said they were not there, who else had the power to be there? Is that the Lagos State government? And there's a general perception that Mr. Tinubu has a lot of influence on Lagos State government. So that was the impression I was given in the first place. And then later we now started seeing that it was actually true that the military was there. And then you can see that even the governor, pretended about the fact that he made a request to the military authorities to actually use force. Because that's what you want them to do. If you want them to disperse a protest, it is reasonable.
Follow orders.
Yes, it is reasonable for me to assume that you're asking them to use force, right? And he said, "Oh, we didn't know, we're going to investigate. It was a sad incident and all of that." But we later found out during the course of the tribunal that he actually made it. In fact, the person who was representing the army was so angry that he had to, spill the beans and say, "Look, it was the governor who made the request." but we went there with blank bullets. So you can see that, this blame game thing, eventually, we're not beginning to see the true picture of what really happened, that it was a very careless and, with due respect, inhumane action on the part of the government to try to disperse a peaceful protest.
Now, let's take a look at how the presidency reacted to the Lekki toll gate. Now, before the shooting, there've been a cry for the president to come out and make a statement and address the youth, which he didn't do until, was it 2 or 3 days after the shooting? And then when he finally came out to do his national address, he kind of omitted the Lekki shooting altogether.
Sorry.
So what will you say about how the president handled it?
Well, you see, his initial silence was expected. I mean, we have come to terms with the president, who doesn't really think it's urgent,
necessary
to intervene or to provide leadership when need be. The lives of Nigerians are being wasted on a daily basis across the country. People are making noise all over the place. We seem to have a president that doesn't, it doesn't seem to care enough to think that this is something that requires urgency. And that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that he's presently incapable of doing so. I mean, it is reasonable to presume that, because if I were a president, and I mean, I don't think there's any country in the world where something of this magnitude will happen, and you will be begging the president to come out to say something, just to say something. We're having a president in the last few months and years who cannot visit any other state, who cannot grant interviews, who handlers cannot trust enough to respond to questions when it's being asked, which is why they are shielding him from answering these questions. So I wasn't surprised when the president didn't say anything, because I mean that has become his style. Is it that his style, or is a reflection of his incapacity to really provide necessary leadership to the country? Now, his silence on Lekki shooting also confirms the fact that we have a president who doesn't really think. I mean, people were protesting peacefully. You are the president of a country. You have been briefed on the fact that some lives were lost. Let's even assume there was no life was lost. There are evidence of the fact that people were shot. They are still in the hospital. The governor visited them. The governor claimed on a CNN program, which I watched, that at least 2 people were killed. Now, this is the protest at Lekki toll gate attracted international attention. And then you are the president of the country. You are making an address. You omitted, deliberately omitted to mention that important fact. It doesn't speak well of this president.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, I agree in total with my learned friend, this analysis and all that. We see a president who behaves like an imperial president, a kind of emperor. For them, they feel the lives that was lost in Lekki doesn't count for much. After all, it's become a daily occurrence. And it is seen that they have been doing times without number, even since the inception of this administration. You remember even Obasanjo himself, he went to OD and leveled it. Saki Biam, I think he also leveled it and all that. And some of these other places, and all today, Obasanjo has not been called to account for what happens in those places and all that. So it's a continuation of that impunity. But people, a general like Muhammadu Buhari, and taking his antecedent as a person and all that, you will recollect when he was military head of state. No, was he even military head of state at that period in time and all that? When there was this Mataseni uprising, I think is it Kano or Kaduna and all that. In Muhammadu Buhari's wisdom, what he did was to deploy the Air Force to go and drone bomb on the enclave of the Mataseni people. And all the people within the vicinity, even people who were not Mataseni but who lived in that environment, suffered collateral damages of the bomb that was dropped on the enclave of the Mataseni people. And of course, too, you and I are quite familiar with the sites, how they've been treated since the inception of this administrations and also for them is a continuation of the impunity that they are used to getting away with. What the hell with just a few lives lost at Lekki. But you see, they are living in the past. This is not 1984 or 1985. The whole world is at attention now. where human rights are violated, where people take laws into their hand because they think they are in position of power and all that. The world is no longer ready to condone something. In fact, human rights is no longer within just the jurisdiction of states anymore. If you violate my rights, exactly. If you violate my rights in here, and I happen to find myself in US, Germany, or whatever and all that, I can still lodge complaints against you, and some of these will be investigated. It is for that reason you find out that even as of today, some of these Kensaruwa's issues and all that, we became an issue. Even because courts in UK, before courts at Hague and some of these other places, so they had better be aware that the era in which you can say because you are president of the country, you are commissioner of police, you are IG of police, you are chief of army or defense staff and all that, you can just do anything within your country or your state and all that and get away with it. That era is gone. Now, with particular to the early of this protest, do you know? And I'm not speaking for the governor of Lagos. Initially, he behaved very well in the way and manner he handled it. You could see he was doing troubleshooting. He was visiting some of the protest guys. He was talking to them and all that. And when he was at the same lake here and all that, you could see people booing him. They threw sachet water at him and all that. He didn't get angry. He didn't react the way some of his brother governors in some of these places reacted, which led to loss of lives and all that. If the federal government had complimented what the governor of Lagos State was doing initially, before he also bought into the idea that hoodlums should be employed to break up the protest, and go and watch it, go and look at the records. That has been the practice with the people in governance in Lagos State. At this same Lekki Tollgate, when that tollgate was going to be instituted, a lot of Nigerians living within that town says, no, don't put this kind of tollgate with this kind of high price within a township road. It's going to create a lot of inconvenience and all that. And certain persons, I think, even in particular, and co, went to that toll gate to demonstrate. What do? They took hoodlums to meet them in there and using machetes and beating and smashing the windscreen of some of the people he came to protest and all. So it has been their stock in trade. But at least initially when this protest was going on all over Lagos, the governor was proactive. He was talking. He was doing troubleshooting. He restrained himself from doing certain things that certain other person in his position probably would have done when sachet water and all missiles were being thrown at him and all that. If the federal government had been also proactive, like he said, we probably would not have, the things would not have degenerated to that level or lasted for that long. I'll give you an example. One single individual was beheaded in Nice, in France, and the president, Macron, left the comforts of the LC, the presidential palace, and went to Nice to do troubleshooting, to calm the situation, to calm the situations and all that, and then to also look and review the security architecture with the mayor, with the governor, with all the security chiefs and all that, and said, look, never would this happen again. And they begin to take positions and all that. If the president has also done that, I'm sure he wouldn't have had this tragedy in our. More importantly, this protest, this agitation for this reform started in 2017. If this government was ready, if they were willing, if they were interested in police reform, is 2017 to year 2020 not enough for us to have resolved all this crisis? And again, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan gave us a beautiful piece of legislation, the admission of criminal justice law. When you look at Section 13, Section 33, Section 34 and thereabout, there are ample provisions to curb police brutality. So look, when a man is arrested, he must be informed of the crime or infraction he has committed. 2, before you take his statement, his lawyer must be there. And if the lawyer is there, you cannot be torturing him in the presence of his lawyer without the lawyer raising an eyebrow. He said, no, in all places where people are being kept, whether police or EFCC or immigration and what have you.
That's detention centers.
The commissioners of police must file returns on a monthly basis with the Attorney General of the state as regards who is in their custody, why they are there, their crime, for what length of time they have been there. Furthermore, the former CG of the Federation, Onoge, also said, look, all the chief magistrates and also the CG of the respective states and all that, and of the Federal Capital Territory, which is also embedded in the ACJ, that look in all custodian facilities and all that. These people should visit those places on a monthly basis and all that to release people take account, ask people to be taken to quality that they really kept in there and all that. And when they don't do that, the Attorney General is supposed to request, both at the federal level and the state level, why are you not filing the return that you're expected to file with me on a monthly basis? Have they been doing that? Furthermore, there is also the Corona law. Anytime anybody dies a violent death, or a death that is not explained, it's the responsibility of a coroner in every state to be interested in why this person died. If a man dies in police cell, the police have no power whatsoever, either under the Constitution, under the Police Act, or under any other laws of the law, to go and bury the person. You are supposed to conduct a coroner inquest on the death and also return his body
to the family,
to the family for proper burial. And once the coroner find out that there has been
it's a fish,
exactly, he is supposed to call for the prosecution or wherever does that. But lo and behold, all these aspects of our laws are not being complied with, and those who have responsibility to enforce the law, like the president, like the Attorney General of the Federation, like the governor, like the Attorney General of the states and other, all of them turn a blind eye on this responsibility simply because, and I'm saying this without fear of out of this, extrajudicial killing and torture has become a state policy in Nigeria, and it is a thing we must all rise up together and fight.
Now, let's now progress to the panel of inquiry that's supposed to look, into this. Now, the first question is, why are these panels being instituted by the states, not from the federal?
Well, I have made the point, I think on this program earlier, that the panels that we currently have are constitutional. They actually don't have...
Are unconstitutional.
They are unconstitutional.
Okay.
Because what you are inquiring into, it's police brutality, the management of the police, even discipline, because if you want to really cause the kind of reform we want to see in the police, you need to talk about discipline of police officers. And then you need to talk about how the police is funded, if you really want to fix the problem holistically, because that's why you need a tribunal. The tribunal is meant to look at the problems, look at, and then profile solutions. Now, the point now is that...
It's tribunal different from panel of inquiry?
Sorry, the panel of inquiry, sorry. Okay. The panel of inquiry is supposed to look at all of these issues, and then they make recommendations on how the problems can be solved. But from what we have seen now, the states are constituting this panel. The states do not have the power under the Constitution to enforce any outcome that will lead to, that will affect the administration of the police. So, and then you ask yourself, why is that so? And I think that people are mistaken about some developments in the past. I recall during the Oputa panel, there was,
that was set up by the federal,
The federal government set up the panel. And, an attempt to compel the appearance of Babangida. There were a lot of cases that came out of that. There was a decision of the court to the effect that the National Assembly, had no power to make a general law on tribunals of inquiry. And I think people are misreading that to say that in any event, the federal government cannot constitute a panel of inquiry with respect to issues on the exclusive list. If you read that decision of the Supreme Court was very clear. I recall it was the WIFO GSC who made the point that there's nothing that prevents the federal government from constituting the National Assembly from making a law, on setting up tribunals of inquiry on matters that has to do with the exclusive list. The policing in this country is a matter within the exclusive list, and so constituting it by the states, in my view, will not really achieve much. It was just another political gimmick, like we have become used to in this country. Another deceptive strategy to dose attention, to take people off the street, to give the impression that something was being done. And in my view, nothing can come out of that. You say you want to compensate victims. Well, fair and good. Nothing stops the state from spending money on. Even if I were in the state house, something I would ask questions. Why do you want to use money from a state government to pay the price of the sins of the federal government? And don't forget, under the Tribunals of Inquiry law of Lagos State, the state can only set up a tribunal of inquiry on matters over which the State House of Assembly has power to make law. The State House of Assembly does not have power to make law with respect to how the police is done in this country. Because
the police is under federal.
Yes, so it is absolutely, in my view, unconstitutional and a great disservice to the industry of Nigerian youths who have come out to demand for reform.
So, but be it as it may.
I wouldn't be as wholesale as my learned friend has said. Even though that is the law, that is the law. No doubt about it. That is what the Constitution and the Police Act says and all that. I would want to look at it from the position that sometimes expediency may have compelled the challenge that we have in our hands. Furthermore, you and I will recollect doctrine of necessity. Sometimes some of these things are compelled by necessity.
Are you talking about the states?
Yes,
instituting a panel?
exactly. Doctrine of necessity sometimes and all that. And furthermore, too, you find out, even though if they do not have the powers, there is nothing stopping that panel of inquiry after they are making when they have written their report, for the Attorney General of Lagos State to forward it to the federal government through the Attorney General of the Federation, for them to collect it and add it to what is being done with Abuja, which is the Federal Capital Territory and all that. So if all those submissions are collated and all that, I think it can be acted upon in the best interest of the Federation, because as of today, even the Femi Falana group have constituted their own panel of inquiry, in which they are also calling for memoranda and submissions and all that from different people. That is an independent body and all that. And when that independent body has concluded its own assignment, nothing stopping them from forwarding their report to the people in all the respective state governors and Attorney General, the CGN of the Federation, the National Assembly, the Senate, and whoever has power within, that the Constitution has given power to really do what is needful with regard to the police.
Now let's take a look at the panel setup.
Yeah.
It is a panel of inquiry,
Yeah.
which means it's supposed to be like an investigative panel that have an investigative responsibility. Now, what powers do this panel have? Who can they, because if they are to conduct investigation, and now let's take the NSAS shooting for example. The state government, Lagos State government, is part of it. The military is part of it. Now, who can they summon into this panel? Or, I don't want to use the word summon, let's say invite into this panel to inquire from. Because do they have the power to someone like the Lagos State governor? Because he is the one that, especially with the question of who sent the military. And the state government has come out to say, no, it wasn't me. The military came in. Kudos to them, by the way, because they're under the federal, which means they may necessarily don't need to appear to this panel, but they're sent to representative panel. And he came in, and the military came in and said, the state government said the back and forth thing. Now, so who do they have the power to invite to this panel? Who can they approach to ask questions?
Yeah, honestly speaking, when you look at the panel of inquiries, law or act or whatever, with regards to the state, if, like he said, maybe the governor of Lagos State or whoever is interested has sent a bill to the House of Assembly for this panel to be backed up with the necessary legislations and all that, you will find out that by the panel of inquiry laws and whatever, the panel of inquiry is like a court. You see, it's like a court. They have all the attributes of a court. And if you saw the way and manner the Lagos State panel has been going about its responsibility or the duty with which it's been shadowed, you find that they have actually been summoning whoever they think is in a position to furnish them with information, with evidence as to how to get to the bottom of what they want to get to the bottom of. And also whoever may have suffered one injury, detriment or deprivation from the police, they have always encouraged them to come before the panel. I don't see anything prohibiting that panel from summoning the Lagos State governor if they do think he is in a good position to furnish them with some information, to furnish them with some evidence. Because he is a dramatic person in all of this. You and I know, like I have cited here, he visited the protest ground severally on different occasions. After that, we had visited the protest, after the protest was forcefully broken up and all. He visited and said that maybe there are only dead bodies, there were no blood stains at the campaign grounds and what have you. Some other person like the Minister of Work has also said he visited the place and discovered the camera several days after the place has been cleaned up and what have you. All these people at least are publicly demonstrated that they have some information or that they knew what happened at a particular period in time when those protests were going on. If that be the case, I would want to submit that I think the panel should have the powers and could exercise the power to summon any of these persons and all that. They have called the army people, even though the man who did the shooting and Lekki has declined to appear before them. That is also part of the challenge that we have as a nation. That just like he cited the Okuta panel too, when they summoned the president, he said he was above the law, he couldn't be summoned. There has also been incident in which Obasanjo was, I think, when there was an assault that took place in his farm in which some policemen lost their teeth and all that. I think he was also asked to appear before a court. That was even a court of competent judicial. He declined to appear and then went to court and then I think they called Chief Babalola presented at that point. I can't remember. And he was declared to be an institution. If no court has declared anybody to be above this panel, and if this panel feels that such and such persons have the requisite information or evidence that may be useful to them, and I think they can summon that. But the challenge is this: if you refuse to appear, do they have the quasi power to compel you to appear? The answer is no, because ordinarily, both at the state level and the federal level, we have seen wanton and no say disobedience of court orders. And those who should compel people to obey court orders is usually the executive arm of government, because the quasi power of the state, like the police, like the army, like the civil defense, like the Lagos State Neighborhood Security Ward, and all those quasi powers reside with the executive. So if the executive is not interested in a court order being obeyed, in somebody appearing before this panel and all that, there is nothing the panel can do to compel such persons to appear before it.
Okay, let's say, so why set up the panel then if they don't have the power to forcefully invite someone?
Yes, my friend is very right that the panel cannot compel attendance. Yes, they can summon people, and the provisions to compel is actually used to be in the law. But after the Okuta panel incident where Babangida went to court, the Supreme Court declared those provisions unconstitutional. So the provisions with respect to arrest and compelling people to, issuing summons and all of that has been declared, inconsistent with the Constitution. So you cannot compare attendance. And again, that's one of the challenges of having a panel being constituted by a state over a matter the federal government has, overriding control in. Because, for example, if you invite the military, they don't come. The state do not have the power to, if you cannot compare legally, but you might have the administrative. For example, if you invite somebody within the state and the person refuses to appear, an officer of the Lagos State government, the government can, there are administrative ways by which you can get the person to come. If this was being done by the federal government, right, and somebody in the military refuses to come, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces can, write a memo to the chief of defense staff, chief of army staff, wherever it is, and say, look, make sure that person appears before the panel. So you can do that, through the back channel, in the absence of a legal means of compelling. So it's one of the challenges you're going to have. And at the end of the day, you might not really get, the truth of the matter. And even if you do get to the truth of the matter, what are you going to really do? You can't enforce anything against the police in the way and manner to appear. Perhaps what's going to happen at the end of the day will be that the Lagos State government will pay people money. But that's a far cry from what we need to. You see, the problem of the police is so monumental. I think we are playing tricks and we are joking. We are joking. You see, what we need an institution that legally has the power to set up the panel and then find out all of the issues and fix it. The problem is big, it's huge, it's even beyond the police. You know, I mean, the police officers are also victims of the system. They are victims of the system because we have a system. I mean, as a legal practitioner, I've had cause to visit police stations. I'm always ashamed to visit any police station. It's a shameful place. You know, I mean, a makeshift building. You know, there are no chairs. You know, police officers buy ballots for themselves. They buy paper for writing materials for themselves. Where do they get these monies from? They start it from the people. They buy uniforms for themselves. Have you been to the barracks?
Buy their own
generators. It's a shame. Animals don't stay in the kind of barracks that we have in this country in some other parts of the world. So this kind of problem, is it what Lagos State Panel of Sequoia is going to fix? So it's a joke. I must say, it's a joke.
So
that's
at the end of it,
now you also need to amend the constitution, even when these recommendations are made. You will need to amend the constitution for those. Most of the recommendations
like
that will come from this panel to be accommodated.
So now that is the other thing. What power will those recommendations have? Because we're still asking questions about the confab. That was 2004
14?
2014. Yeah, we're still asking a lot of questions about what happens to that confab. You know, money spent, you know, time spent, recommendations made, nothing have come out of it. So what do we expect to see from the recommendations?
You see, I'm sorry to jump in. You see, we're not ready to fix this country. That's the truth. Some forces in this country are ready to fix this country. It's unfortunate that we don't have time to discuss the issue of you know, the role of National Assembly in fixing Nigeria. Because if you really look at it, if you have, my late mother would always tell me that if you have the best building in the world, you know, painted with gold and whatever, whose foundation is shaky, that both the gold and everything is a waste. That's what happened to Nigeria. Nigeria right now, whatever you build on Nigeria, anything you want to fix on Nigeria, it's not going to work until you revisit this country and begin to talk about restructuring. Policing, for example, why should it be that only the president can give orders with respect to policing? The states should be able to, you know, go ahead and fix this problem. You have security challenges all over the country. In my state, for example, there are kidnappers. People, you know, in fact, the one that happened recently happened close to my community, my local government. And people from there, they are told that the people they saw there were Fulani herdsmen. Now, how do you fix it? Because, you know, you have a situation where those who are in control of the military, control of the police, are from a particular side of the region. I think they wouldn't think that it's a political statement that they are Fulani herdsmen. So at the end of the day, we have foundational problems. Until we revisit the foundation, all of this we are doing is a waste of time.
Which should have been what would have led us to the insecurity issue if we had had time. Unfortunately, a lot to talk about in just a very short time. Thank you so much for being part of the program today, Barrister Tunde Kolawole, public affairs analyst and legal practitioner. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, Barrister Elvis Asia, legal practitioner. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much for joining us today, for watching and listening to us. Next week, Sunday, is another day on Galactic Television. The time is 1 o'clock. I'm Solomon of Until next week, good afternoon.